Hello everybody, I'm Paul Ducklin from Sophos Naked Security. Welcome back to another week's Naked Security Live. As you can see, my Barnet is coming along an absolute treat. In case you're wondering what Barnet means, it's Cockney rhyming slang. Barnet fair, lockdown hair. I'm very pleased with how it's coming along. And in the light of that I'm so amused, I'd like us to have a little bit of Friday fun today. So as you can see, today's topic is how to calculate important things using a computer. There is a serious side to this. We will get to it in the end, I promise you. But I want to tell you a story that emerged yesterday in the UK, because it actually tells you a lot about how we can inadvertently allow computer software to make decisions that we as humans would instinctively know were simply incorrect. So here's the story. If you want, wrote it up today. I wrote it up today on Naked Security. Here it is. If you want to look for it, you can tell looking at that headline. I'm going to say it alive. The massive coronavirus pandemic IT blunder with a funny side. You can tell that I didn't follow my own guidelines of read the headline aloud before you publish it. It's a bit of a mouthful. But you'll see where we're going to in a minute. This story, it's not my story. It actually is the work of this chap. I just thought I'd better show him to you. It's a very unflattering photo because the camera is not doing the colours terribly well. Liam Thorpe, he's the political editor at the Liverpool Echo, which is a daily newspaper published in Liverpool. Just by the way, in case you're wondering, folks, there is only one true Liverpool. It's not the Liverpool in New York. It's not the Liverpool in Canada. It's not the Liverpool in Sydney, New South Wales. It's the Liverpool. And he writes for the Liverpool Echo. And what happened is that a day or two ago, he received a text message, an SMS, from the health service in the UK saying, basically, because you're overweight to a certain degree, we think you're at more risk. Basically, the bottom line is that coronavirus vaccines in the UK are being given out according to your level of risk. So basically, older people got it first. That's why Her Majesty the Queen was one of the first people up at over 90 years of age. And the idea is that let's give it to the people who most need it first, and then we'll carry on down the list, and those of us who can do with it later can get it later. So he figured that's a bit weird. I'm 32 years old. He describes himself as having got a bit chunky due to eating pancakes during coronavirus lockdown. But he kind of figured there must be a mistake. And instead of just going, you know what, it's my good fortune, I'll just show up and get the jab and I won't have to wait another month or two or whatever till my cohorts get it. He figured there's something wrong with this, and it turned out that was the case because his doctor phoned him in the morning, and this is a great part of the story, that somebody bothered to check and then intervened, not just to put the mistake to rest, but to explain it, and so that it wasn't just ignored. Basically, it turns out that the UK Health Service uses a measurement called BMI. You may have heard of it, Body Mass Index. I have no idea why it's considered scientific. I'm not sure that it is, but it kind of works. Basically, what you do, it was invented in the early 1800s by a guy who was one of these polymaths of the day. I think he was an astronomer, a mathematician, and a sociologist in Belgium. I forget his name. And he invented this thing that is now called the Body Mass Index. You take your body mass in kilograms and you divide it by the square of your height. So BMI has a unit of kilograms per meter squared. And it's important. You need to know that, because units are going to come into this a couple of times, because they're critical when we're measuring, and most importantly when we're capturing and using data in computer software. Now, how it works or why it works, or even if it works, I just can't tell you, because obviously, presumably the idea is you take your weight, your mass, and you kind of adjust it by what you might expect your volume to be, to see whether you're eating not enough, so you're underweight, you're normal, or you're overweight. And how that works, I don't know, because if you ever did maths at school, even if you don't remember the formulae, you'll remember that there was a time when you were forced to remember them. You'll know that if you think about the area of a square, you square the side, or for a rectangle you multiply one side by the other. So area goes by square, but volume, as you know, we call, if you think of the shape of a die, We call it a cube because you take the length of the side of a cube and you cube it. You raise it to the power of 3 to get volume. So quite where the squared comes into body mass index, nobody really knows. But it seems that it was kind of good enough maybe for mental arithmetic calculations when there were no calculators back in the early 19th century. And for some reason it's kind of stuck to this day, and rightly or wrongly, it's provided you stick to the rules and stick to the units, you can kind of compare one person's BMI with another. So the idea is there's a system that says, let's go through everybody and let's calculate their BMI, and if they're over a certain limit, which I believe is something like, it doesn't matter what the number, 40 kilograms per square meter is the unit apparently, then you're considered, due to your body mass compared to your height, to be at heightened risk of COVID-19 problems. So therefore you can jump the queue. Even if you wouldn't normally qualify on your age, you can jump the queue and you can go and get your coronavirus vaccination. Great idea. So let's message those people and let them know so they can show up and get the jab as soon as possible and keep things moving on. Sounds like a fantastic idea. Here's the thing. As far as I know, it's the second heaviest person ever. He's still alive. He now weighs a sprightly 68 kilograms, which is about in tune with his height, apparently. But at the time that he was the world record holder, he was just over 600 kilograms was his body mass. It's a chap in Saudi Arabia. He's in his mid-20s now, I think. And so he has apparently the highest known body mass index ever when he was the record holder, which was just a shade over 200. Now, Liam Thorpe's BMI came out at 28,000. So clearly something is almost absurdly wrong with that number if the world record of all time is 200 and he's at 28,000 and the limit for you to jump the queue for the vaccination is supposed to be something like 40. It looks as though something has gone wrong, and yet he received the message saying, turn up. Now you can imagine when medical mix-ups, particularly where they involve things like drug dosages, or usually end badly. In this case, fortunately, the oversight of his GP and the fact that he didn't feel like he should take advantage of what was obviously a mistake to jump the queue kind of settled everything. Here's what happened. Now, Liam's height, by British standards, if he were Dutch, he'd probably be considered of average height. In the UK, he's quite a tall fellow. He is 1 metre and 88 centimetres tall. 1.88 metres. So for him, I'll do the calculation quickly. For him to have a body mass index of 28,000, you get a calculation, it looks something like that. You would take whatever the mass we have to solve for, divide it by the square of his height, 1.88, and that would have to be 28,000. So for him to have a body mass index of 28,000, he would have to weigh 98,963 kilograms. To give you an idea, the locomotives that pull the Eurotunnel trains that have cars and trucks in them are 130 tons each. So he should not have been getting warnings from the health service saying, please show up for a coronavirus vaccination. He should have been getting warnings from Highways England saying, whatever you do, Liam, do not cross any road bridge anywhere in the kingdom or it will collapse. That's how extreme, that's how far out the measurement was. It turns out that, of course, being 1.88 m or 188 centimetres, but living in the UK, as in common with many Commonwealth countries, even those that ditched feet and inches decades before Britain did, people still tend to give their height and use feet and inches to give their height. So he is 6'2". And somebody sometime decided, I don't know how I'm going to enter 6'2". So instead of actually checking the units, they just put in 6.2. And so his height was recorded as 6.2 centimetres or 62 millimetres. Now that alone should never have been captured by a system. Because if we go back to Guinness World Record holders, apparently the shortest person currently living in the world is 10 times taller than Liam would have been if he were 6.2 centimetres tall. So, you know, you can imagine calling up Guinness World Records and saying, hey, I see that the world record holder for shortest height is 60 centimetres. Well, I'm only 6 centimetres. That would kind of be like calling them up and saying, oh, I just pole vaulted 70 metres. Or it would be like calling them up and saying, I have just won an official 100-meter race in under 1 second. Take that, Usain Bolt. So clearly that data should never have been captured, and I presume the reason it could be captured is that there was nowhere for the user who entered it to check the units they were using. Because we talk casually, what's your weight? What's your, more correctly, your body mass, but let's call it weight. What's your weight? So you might say, if you live in most of the countries of the world, you might say, oh, I'm 72. Or in the US, you might say, I'm 144, meaning pounds, 72 kilograms. In the UK, we have this weird thing called stones. Who knew, but there are 14 pounds in a stone, 16 ounces in a pound. I don't know how it works, but in the UK you'd be 10 stone 4, I believe. So you can't record your body mass as 72 or 144 or 10.2 because they just can't be compared. And that's obviously what happened in this case. And it led to somebody who, if their height really had been 6 centimeters, so must weigh about 100 kgs, then he would have beaten the world record by a factor of 10. And if his body mass index had been 28,000, then, that would have mean he would have to have been more than 100 times heavier than the world record holder. So both of those things are absolutely absurd. Fortunately, this wasn't a thing where some machine automatically dosed him with sedative drug or something, or gave him painkillers where there might have been too little, or gave him a sedative where he might have had too much. It all ended well. But there is a sort of a funny side to it. But there are 3, if you like, morals or lessons to learn out of this for anyone who's involved in either capturing data, storing data, or processing data, particularly when things like medical or safety decisions will be made on it. So let's go through those very quickly. The first one isn't really a cybersecurity thing, but I managed to get a cybersecurity angle. This is my sociological tip for the day. Basically, tip number 1, don't jump the queue if you think someone's made a mistake. Now, Liam did the right thing here. He could have gone, oh, good fortune, I'll nip to the head of the queue, and then later they'll phone me and say, oh, you don't need to go for the vaccine. We made a mistake. He said, oh, I already had it. Fair enough. So he didn't do that, which means that A, he didn't take somebody else's place, and B, he didn't potentially put himself in harm's way by getting something that he wasn't supposed to. And by the way, from a cybersecurity point of view, there is an analogy here in real life. If your bank were to credit your account by mistake with $98,963, one for each kilogram that Liam was supposed to have weighed, and you looked at that and thought, I jolly well know that's a mistake, I'll rush out and spend it before they realise, and then it's too late, it's not going to work out. You are almost certainly going to end up having to pay it back because you should have known it was a mistake. So be careful about taking advantage of things where you kind of figure this isn't supposed to have happened. Always try to do the right thing. Second tip, when you're collecting or recording data, whatever it is, unless you know that the number you're writing down is what's called a dimensionless number. And when you're measuring something, it's never going to be dimensionless by definition. So when you're recording things like mass or height, then you need to make sure that you're recording it with the units. And if you're designing a user interface, even if it means the person actually has to type 188 cm or 1.88 m or 6'2" double quotes to give 6'2", even if it makes it slightly harder for the user to put the data in, at least it means that you've forced them into a position where they have to record the data correctly. And the third thing is, most importantly, if you're designing software that's going to process data, never ignore peculiarities. You can see here, as I mentioned, Liam would have had to have, for this all to have panned out, he would have to have been 10 times, he would have to have beaten the smallest person in the world record by a factor of 10. And he would have to have beaten the heaviest person in the world record by a factor of 100, which is clearly just absolutely out of the question. And it's the kind of anomaly that says something is wrong. And when it comes to dealing with peculiarities correctly, there are actually 2 sides to that. One is, don't try and correct them or just accept them automatically in order to deal with them. But equally importantly, Don't just ignore them either and go, oh, that's obviously been a mistake. I'll just throw it out or sweep it under the carpet. And that didn't happen here. Hats off to his doctor, realised the blunder, phoned up Liam. He's got a great video on the Liverpool Echo. Go and have a look there. You can find the link in the Naked Security article. He's got a very wry sense of humour, and he just explains how, in fact, the call was very embarrassing for his GP, but they all had a good laugh at the end. So that last point about not ignoring peculiarities, that is the place where we can get the key cybersecurity lessons out of this. And I want to give you two examples of how things can go very wrong for you on a cybersecurity point of view if you either just go, oh well, I'll just accept that because it's probably okay, or if you just go, well, nobody said anything so I won't bother. The first example is that many a malware attack has succeeded because somebody's seen something in a log reporting something and has gone, oh, you know what, that's probably just the sysadmins doing their thing, I'll think no more of it. And we know that's a real problem with ransomware attacks these days, right? The so-called living off the land trick, where the crooks, they don't bring in their own malware, they use tools that can be used dangerously or for good, and they find stuff in the network and they use it, and somebody ignores the warning signs that the wrong person is doing the right thing. And the other thing to remember is that many a phishing web page has succeeded because somebody kind of figured, well, nobody pointed it out, the system let it go, so I don't need to reconsider this. Now, Liam's doctor did that. That's how their situation ended well. And, you know, the typical story you'll hear there is somebody saying, well, you know what, the web filter didn't block the site, so I just figured it was okay to assume that IT had given me basically an access all areas card and it was okay to go to the site. So there you have it. Let's just go through those things again. Don't jump the queue or try to take advantage of something that you jolly well know is a mistake. It's not quite the same as deliberately exploiting something when it comes to cybercrime, but if you know it's not supposed to happen, then actually investigating and dealing with it is the right thing to go. When you're collecting data, make sure you're collecting data and verifying it that it has the right units and that it appears to match. And if it doesn't, do something about it. Don't just throw it away and ignore it, and don't just blindly accept it. The anomalies are there to warn you about something. And that is the last tip. If there's a peculiarity, if there's something you suspect but the system didn't warn you, or if the system warns you but you can think of an excuse why you can ignore the warning, don't do that without, as the US Public Service loves to say for cybersecurity, don't take cybersecurity actions before first you stop, think, connect. So thanks for listening, everybody. Hope you had a little bit of Friday fun. And until next time, stay secure.